approve this bill.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Heritage for Multiculturalism.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Just at the outset, I'd like to say I'll be splitting my time with the member from Hastings, Lennox and Addington. And on this February 14th, I'd just like to wish three loves of my life, my wife Suchita, my son Zakir and Nitin, a very happy Valentine's Day. Mr. Speaker, I rise proudly today to speak to Bill C-69, an act that will enact the Impact Assessment Act and the Canadian Energy and Regulator Act. This bill will introduce the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada. It will replace the National Energy Board with the Canadian Energy Regulator, and it will reinstate protections for waters used for travel across this country. I want to start by complimenting the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change and her department for the important work done to get us to where we are today. As stated in her speech earlier this evening, this legislation is the product of 14 months of extensive consultation with provinces and territories, Indigenous persons, companies, environmental groups and communities right across Canada. We went through that consultation period, Mr. Speaker, because we want to make sure that we got this assessment package right. We are introducing today an impact assessment system, a reinvigorated energy regulator, and restoring protections for navigable waters. These will restore public trust in the government's ability to review major energy projects. This trust is critical, Mr. Speaker. It was lost with the patchwork of harmful changes that had been introduced by the previous Conservative government in this House. To be clear, the orientation of our government could not be more different than that of Mr. Stephen Harper, the previous Prime Minister. We accept the science that the climate is changing. We have unmuzzled scientists. We have put a price on carbon pollution. We have invested unprecedented sums in shifting to a low-carbon economy. Now we turn our work to the important aspects of environmental assessments. We wanted to ensure that we not only restored the environmental protections that were cut under the Harper government, particularly those made in 2012, but that we created a better framework to protect the environment while encouraging at the same time investment and job creation in Canada. So we took the time necessary to get the feedback from those that would be directly involved in the process after its implementation to make sure that this new system will work. With $500 billion in energy investment that is planned for our country over the next decade, Mr. Speaker, a functional, big-picture approach to energy and resource development is critical to ensure that we are protecting our environment while encouraging economic growth and job creation. The two go together, Mr. Speaker. To ensure that projects that came forward over the last 2 years were not held up or passed without careful review that ensured the protection of the environment, we put in place interim environmental assessment principles in January of 2016. That step ensured that we had a framework to review major project proposals until we introduced this new assessment plan. This avoided leaving environmental assessment to the uneven and unbalanced system put in place by the previous government, which favoured industry to the detriment of environmental protection. It was under those interim principles that our government approved the Kinder Morgan pipeline, Mr. Speaker, and rejected the Northern Gateway pipeline, which would have gone right through the pristine Great Bear Rainforest on the west coast of British Columbia and destroyed that vital ecosystem. Let's be clear, Mr. Speaker. The Northern Gateway pipeline was approved by former Prime Minister Harper in the face of widespread public opposition to fit the political agenda set out by the previous government. The result of our 14 months of consultations is a clarified review process which implements a robust method to protect our environment. In addition, we are maintaining our commitment to require a gender-based analysis for every project under review. Mr. Speaker, the consideration for how energy resource development impacts women and their livelihood has been neglected for far too long. And that is why we are committing through this legislation to ensure that gender impact will always be a consideration for evaluating proposals. Another critical aspect of this legislation is reconciliation with Indigenous persons. Built into the new rules under Bill C-69, Mr. Speaker, is a requirement to consider the impacts of development on Indigenous rights and culture in the decision-making process, recognized and affirmed by Section 35 of the Constitution. Whether or not a project moves forward is directly linked to the impacts it would have on the rights of affected Indigenous communities. Our goal across government, Mr. Speaker, is to renew the relationship with Indigenous persons, founded on the recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership. Mr. Speaker, this was the theme of the Prime Minister's address in this very chamber earlier today. This is no longer a negotiable position, Mr. Speaker. It is no longer the suggestion that it used to be under the previous government's regulations. It is now a mandatory factor to consider Indigenous impact in assessing and developing energy projects in this country. As well as making decisions based on science and evidence, we will require the incorporation of traditional Indigenous knowledge and community knowledge right alongside it. We are committed to protecting Indigenous traditional knowledge and using that very knowledge before making decisions on resource development. Mr. Speaker, in my riding of Parkdale High Park, I've heard from my constituents on these very issues. At a recent town hall that I hosted on Indigenous reconciliation, residents of my community voiced loudly and clearly that the rights and needs of Indigenous people in this country must be taken into account when developing our energy and resource sector. A focal point of the concern expressed to me by the residents of Parkdale High Park was that our First Peoples were not involved in these processes when it came to projects such as mining, hydro, or oil and gas development, and that Indigenous persons need to be partners in the assessments of projects. Mr. Speaker, I've heard these concerns of my constituents. I've relayed those concerns to our government, and our government has responded with this bill. Under the new rules in Bill C-69, Indigenous people will be engaged from the outset to the end of the process with the aim of securing free, prior, and informed consent, implementing the principles of UNDRIP into resource development. This means a requirement will now be built into the assessment system to engage with and consult with Indigenous people throughout the assessment process, including monitoring and follow-up engagement, Mr. Speaker. For example, we are investing a total of $1 billion over the next 5 years to ensure that we have the capacity to support essential Indigenous participation and capacity development for assessing and monitoring impact, as well as expanding public participation and the scientific capacity of federal departments and government agencies. Mr. Speaker, the residents of my riding of Parkdale High Park have spoken to me repeatedly about the importance of Indigenous reconciliation as a means of achieving another fundamental priority, that is protecting our environment. During meetings at my constituency office, during gatherings right here in Ottawa, at town hall discussions, I have heard repeatedly from strong advocates from my riding, like Green 13, Green 14, the Citizens Climate Lobby, and Earth Day Canada, that protecting the environment is the most pressing issue of our generation, that combating climate change and reducing greenhouse gas emissions must be at the heart of any actions we take as a government. Mr. Speaker, again, those concerns were expressed to me, I've heard them, and so too has our government. In response to these kinds of concerns and the voices of Canadians, not just in my riding, but right around the country, we are, through this bill, overhauling the assessment process so that it prioritizes the environment, so that it compels the involvement of Indigenous persons, and so that it considers the impact of project development on women. These factors are all critical to ensuring that economic growth proceeds in a manner that has the confidence of all Canadians. Mr. Speaker, with Bill C-69, we are also attentive to the needs of proponents of projects for a streamlined, transparent, and more efficient process, better rules, and quicker decision-making. La mise en œuvre d'un processus prévisible.
The implementation of a predictable process will be promising if we invest in clean innovation and maintain high standards for sustainability and responsibility of businesses. This means that we are sending a message that we can do better. Our government encourages investment in projects that create jobs. We want to make sure that they are implemented within the context of a low-carbon economy. We want to favor innovation. This bill will also directly improve transparency and access to information in order to ensure the participation of the public in major environmental systems from the very beginning. Regulations will require that sources of knowledge, including scientific ones, will be included in environmental assessment, and that decisions made must be made available to the public through a public registry.
Environmental groups, energy companies, and Indigenous leaders and Canadians across the country, our government has developed a new set of rules that will restore public trust and ensure development moves forward responsibly. This bill amends the patchwork of environmental laws and processes brought forward by the previous government, creating an impossible system that eroded trust, disregarded science, and put our communities at risk, under which not a single energy project was built. With this one project, one assessment process bill, we are keeping our commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to address climate change, to transition to a low-carbon economy, to advance Indigenous reconciliation, while encouraging vital job growth in this country. I wholeheartedly support this bill, Mr. Speaker. I urge my colleagues to do the same. Merci beaucoup.